The wind cut through Elena's cheap coat like a blade. She stood on the corner of 5th and Madison, her phone screen flickering. 7% battery, then 6, then the dreaded red bar, pulsing like a dying heartbeat. Her fingers, already numb, fumbled with the cracked case as she refreshed the rideshare app for the 3rd time. Black Rolls Royce, license plate ending in 7249. Her breath came out in short, visible bursts. Christmas Eve in the city meant surge pricing she couldn't afford, but the alternative was walking 12 blocks in heels that were already rubbing her ankles raw, carrying a box of her belongings from a job she'd just been fired from. Merry fucking Christmas. The sleek black car pulled up to the curb with barely a whisper of sound. Expensive, predatory, out of place in this part of town. Through the tinted window, she could just make out the numbers on the plate. 749. Thank God. Elena yanked open the rear door and slid inside before the cold could steal what little warmth she had left. The door closed behind her with a heavy, final thunk that seemed to echo in her chest. Immediately, the world changed. The interior of the car was warm, almost oppressively so after the biting wind. The leather seats were butter-soft beneath her, and the cabin smelled like expensive cologne, aged whiskey and something else, something metallic and sharp that made the back of her throat tighten. Blood. Old blood, maybe, or new blood, cleaned but not quite gone. "Thank you so much for waiting," she said breathlessly, pulling the seatbelt across her lap. Her voice sounded too loud in the silence. "I know it's Christmas Eve and everyone's trying to get home, and I really appreciate—" The driver said nothing. The partition between front and back was clear glass, not the usual opaque screen. She could see the back of his head, dark hair, broad shoulders that seemed to fill the entire front seat, hands on the steering wheel that were so large they made the luxury car feel small. Those hands were covered in tattoos. Black ink crawled up from his wrist, disappearing under the rolled sleeves of a white dress shirt that looked like it cost more than her rent. The designs were intricate, violent, skulls, serpents, words in a language she didn't recognize. The car didn't move. Elena clutched the cardboard box on her lap tighter. Inside were the contents of her desk drawer, a coffee mug, a succulent that was already dying, a framed photo of her and her grandmother. The app said the destination is already entered. 2240 Warren Street. Still nothing. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Her pulse began to hammer in her ears. That was when she saw his eyes in the rear-view mirror, one blue, one brown. The mismatched gaze locked onto hers with the intensity of a predator spotting prey, and Elena's entire body went cold in a way that had nothing to do with the weather. His face was half-shadowed, but she could see enough. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, cruel mouth, and running down the left side of his face from temple to jaw were scars, jagged, deliberate, like someone had taken a broken bottle and carved their hatred into his skin. He was terrifying. He was beautiful. He was not her Uber driver. "I think," her voice cracked. She cleared her throat. Tried again. "I think there's been a mistake." The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, something darker. "You think?" His voice was deep, rough, like gravel wrapped in velvet. It slid over her skin and made every hair on her body stand on end. Elena's fingers found the door handle. She pulled. Nothing happened. She pulled again, harder, panic rising in her chest like floodwater. The handle moved, but the door didn't budge. Child-proof locks. Of course. "Let me out." She hated how her voice shook. "Please, I got in the wrong car, that's all. Just let me out and I'll—" "You got in my car," he said quietly. "That was your first mistake." The engine purred to life beneath her, a low growl of horsepower and danger. "Your second mistake," he continued, pulling away from the curb with the smooth precision of someone who'd driven these streets 1,000 times, was doing it on tonight of all nights. The city lights began to slide past the windows, faster now, the car accelerating with barely a sound. Elena twisted in her seat, looking back at the corner where she'd been standing. A real ride-share car sat there now. Hazards blinking, the driver holding a phone and looking around in confusion. Her phone. Where was her phone? She'd dropped it. When she got in the car, she'd dropped it on the sidewalk, and now it was gone, and she was in a stranger's car, and nobody knew where she was, and— "Who are you?" The words came out as a whisper. His eyes found hers again in the mirror. The blue one caught the passing streetlights, turning it almost silver. The brown one stayed dark, fathomless. "You don't know?" He sounded almost amused. "Then you're either incredibly unlucky or incredibly stupid. I just need to get home." Her throat was so tight she could barely breathe. "Please, I don't have anything worth. I don't have money, or I don't want your money, Piccola." The endearment, if it even was one, sounded wrong in his mouth. Dangerous. They were leaving downtown now, the buildings growing shorter, the crowds thinning. He drove like he owned the road, fast, confident, taking turns without hesitation. Every traffic light seemed to turn green as they approached, as if the city itself was clearing a path. "Where are you taking me?" Elena's nails dug into the cardboard box. The edges crumpled under her grip. "Away." "Away where?" "Does it matter?" "Yes." The word came out too loud, echoing in the enclosed space. "Yes, it matters. You can't just, I have a life. I have people who will notice I'm gone." "Do you?" He cut her off, and something in his tone made her stomach drop. "Because from where I sit in Piccola, you look like someone nobody's waiting for." The words hit like a slap. He wasn't wrong. That was the worst part. Her grandmother was gone. Her job was gone. Her apartment would be gone by the end of the month when she couldn't make rent. The box on her lap contained everything she had in the world that mattered. Nobody was waiting. Hot tears pricked at her eyes, and she bit down hard on the inside of her cheek to keep them from falling. She wouldn't cry, not in front of him, not when he'd already seen too much. "I could scream," she said instead, lifting her chin. At a red light, someone would hear. "Go ahead." His voice was utterly unconcerned, and that scared her more than anything else. He wasn't worried about witnesses, wasn't worried about being caught, which meant either he was insane or powerful enough that it didn't matter. The city limits approached. She could see the sign up ahead, the last gas station before the highway stretched out into darkness and snow-covered fields. Please. She hated begging, but fear was a living thing in her chest now, clawing at her lungs. "Please, I won't tell anyone. I'll forget this ever happened. Just let me go." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then they passed the sign, leaving the city behind, and the speedometer climbed 60, 70, 80 miles per hour on an empty highway flanked by winter darkness. "Too late," he said softly. His scarred reflection watched her in the mirror, those mismatched eyes holding her captive more surely than any lock. "We're leaving town." The words settled over her like a sentence. Elena pressed herself back against the leather seat, the box clutched to her chest like a shield, and watched the lights of the only home she'd ever known disappear into the night behind them. The mansion rose from the darkness like something out of a nightmare. Gothic spires clawed at the sky, and iron gates groaned open as the Rolls-Royce approached, triggered by some invisible signal. Snow had begun to fall, thick, heavy flakes that caught in the headlights and made the world beyond the windshield look like static. Elena's breath fogged the window. She pressed her face to the glass, searching desperately for any sign of civilization. Houses, cars, people, nothing. Just endless white fields, black forest, and this hulking stone fortress that looked like it had been built to keep people in, not out. The car stopped in a circular driveway, and the engine died with a finality that made her heart stutter. "Out!" His voice cut through the silence. The locks clicked open. Elena didn't move. Her muscles had locked up, every instinct screaming at her to stay small, stay still, like prey hoping the predator would lose interest. The driver's door opened, closed. Heavy footsteps crunched through fresh snow, circling around to her side of the car. When her door opened, the cold rushed in like a living thing, stealing her breath. He stood there, and God, he was even more massive outside the car. 6'4" at least, shoulders broad enough to block out the light from the mansion's entrance. The scars on his face looked deeper in the shadows, more brutal. "I said out." He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. "No." The word slipped out before she could stop it. His scarred eyebrow lifted slightly. "No, I'm not." Her voice shook so badly she had to stop and breathe. "I'm not going in there." For a moment, she thought he might laugh or drag her out by her hair. Instead, he leaned down, one tattooed hand gripping the top of the door frame, bringing that devastating face level with hers. "You have two choices, Piccola," he said quietly. "You walk in on your own feet, or I carry you. Either way, you're going inside." "Why are you doing this?" "'Cause you got in my car." He said it like it explained everything, like it was the most natural consequence in the world. When she still didn't move, he sighed, a long, patient sound that somehow made him more terrifying, and reached in. His hands closed around her upper arms, and he lifted her out of the car like she weighed nothing. The box tumbled from her lap, spilling her pathetic belongings into the snow. She struggled instinctively, but it was like fighting against steel cables wrapped in warm skin. Don't, he warned, his breath ghosting against her temple. You'll hurt yourself. He set her down on her feet, but kept one hand locked around her wrist, firm, unyielding, but careful not to bruise. The size difference was obscene. His fingers overlapped completely around her wrist, and when he started walking toward the mansion's entrance, she had no choice but to stumble after him or be dragged. The massive front doors swung open before they reached them. Two men stood in the entrance, both armed, both watching her with the flat, assessing stares of professional killers. One had a scar bisecting his lip. The other wore a shoulder holster openly, the gun a dark promise against his ribs. "Boss," the scarred one said, nodding once. His eyes slid to Elena, then away, like she wasn't worth cataloging. "We weren't expecting—" "I know." Dante pulled her past them into an entrance hall that belonged in a museum, not a home. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, a staircase that swept upward like something from a dark fairy tale. "Put her things in the east wing, 3rd floor. Wait." Elena tried to pull back, but his grip didn't budge. "You can't just—" "Marco." Dante didn't even look at the other guard. "Tell Nona we have a guest for Christmas." "Nona?" "Grandmother." The guard nodded and disappeared down a hallway. Dante finally released her wrist, and Elena stumbled backward, putting distance between them. Her mind raced, cataloging exits. The front door, still open, the two guards standing there like sentries, windows, but they were high, probably locked. The hallway where the guard had disappeared. "Don't." Dante's voice cut through her planning like a knife. He shrugged out of his coat, revealing more tattoos that crawled up his forearms and disappeared under his rolled shirt sleeves. "You won't make it past the gate." "You don't know that." His mismatched eyes found hers, and this time there was something almost like pity in them. "I know exactly how far you'll get. To the wall, if you're fast. Halfway over, if you're lucky. Then you'll fall, and you'll hurt yourself, and I'll have to come get you." He'd done this before. The certainty in his voice made that clear. "Why?" Her voice cracked. "What do you want from me?" "That," he said, turning toward the staircase, "depends on who you work for. I don't work for anyone. I told you I just lost my job." "Then you have terrible timing." He started climbing the stairs, each footstep heavy and deliberate. "Stay here. Don't touch anything. Don't talk to anyone. I'll deal with you after I make some calls." And then he was gone, disappearing into the upper floors of the mansion, leaving her alone in the entrance hall with two armed guards who wouldn't meet her eyes. Elena stood there, shivering in her thin coat, and made a decision. She waited 20 minutes. The guards had relaxed their stance, talking quietly to each other in Italian. One of them lit a cigarette, the smoke curling up toward the chandelier. When they both turned away, she ran. Not toward the front door. That would be suicide. Instead, she bolted down the same hallway the guard had taken earlier, her cheap heels clicking on marble before she kicked them off, running in stockinged feet. The hallway opened into a massive kitchen, all stainless steel and dark wood, and beyond that, a door. She threw it open and cold air slapped her face. Outside, the snow was falling harder now, already ankle deep. She ran anyway, her feet going numb almost instantly, her breath tearing out of her lungs in ragged gasps. The wall loomed ahead, 12 feet of stone and iron topped with spikes that gleamed dully in the security lights. She could climb it. She had to. Elena's fingers found purchase in the gaps between stones, and she hauled herself up, ignoring the way the rough edges tore at her palms. Her feet scrambled for holds, her muscles screaming in protest. Halfway up, she looked back. The mansion blazed with light, gothic and beautiful and terrifying. No one had followed. Maybe they didn't care. Maybe he'd told them to let her try, let her fail, let her learn her place. Her foot slipped. For one weightless moment, she hung suspended, fingers clawing at stone. Then gravity won, and she fell backward into the snow-covered ground. The impact drove the air from her lungs. Pain exploded through her left ankle, white-hot and nauseating. She tried to stand, tried to run, but her leg buckled beneath her. and she went down again with a cry she couldn't hold back. No, no, no! She crawled forward on her hands and knees, dragging her injured ankle, snow soaking through her clothes. Please! Footsteps crunched behind her, slow, unhurried. I told you. Dante's voice came from above her, conversational and utterly calm. You wouldn't make it. Elena twisted to look up at him. He stood there in just his shirt sleeves, snow catching in his dark hair, hands in his pockets. He wasn't even breathing hard. How did you... Her teeth chattered so violently she could barely speak. Cameras. He crouched down in front of her, bringing that scarred face level with hers. Motion sensors, guards, Piccola, this is a fortress, not a summer home. She tried to push herself away from him, but her ankle screamed in protest and fresh tears spilled down her frozen cheeks. That, he said, nodding toward her leg, is exactly what I said would happen. Before she could respond, he stood and scooped her up in his arms like she was a child. One arm under her knees, the other around her back, pulling her against a chest that radiated heat like a furnace. Put me down. No. I hate you. I know. He carried her back toward the mansion, and Elena had no choice but to cling to his shoulders or fall. The size difference was humiliating. She felt tiny against him, helpless, her entire body fitting easily in his arms. The guards at the back door didn't even blink as he carried her past them. Get the first aid kit, Dante ordered, and call Dr. Russo. Tell him it's not urgent, but I need him here within the hour. Yes, boss. He carried her up the grand staircase, down a hallway lined with oil paintings of stern-faced men and women, and into a bedroom that was larger than her entire apartment. The bed was enormous, four-poster, draped in dark velvet. A fireplace crackled against one wall. Windows overlooked the snow-covered grounds and that impossible wall she'd failed to climb. Dante set her down on the bed with surprising gentleness, then stepped back. The doctor will look at your ankle, he said. You'll stay here tonight. I want to go home. Her voice was small, broken. He studied her for a long moment, those mismatched eyes unreadable. This is home, he said finally, at least until I figure out what to do with you. Then he turned and walked out, closing the door behind him. The lock clicked into place with a sound like a tombstone settling. Elena woke to the smell of espresso and vanilla. For one disoriented moment, she thought she was home. Before the eviction notice, before the job loss, back when her grandmother was still alive and Sunday mornings meant fresh cornetti and laughter. Then the pain in her ankle flared and reality crashed back. The bedroom was flooded with weak winter sunlight. Someone had covered her with a thick duvet during the night, and her torn stockings had been removed, her injured ankle wrapped in a professional bandage. On the nightstand sat a tray, coffee, pastries that looked homemade, and a small glass bottle of painkillers with a handwritten note in elegant script. For the pain. Welcome, Kara. Nona Elena's stomach growled traitorously at the sight of food, but she ignored it. She wouldn't eat his food, wouldn't accept his... The door burst open without warning. A tiny woman swept into the room like a hurricane in an apron. She couldn't have been more than 5 feet tall, with silver hair pinned in an elegant bun and eyes that were warm, dark, and sharp as obsidian. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in her entire life. Finally, you are awake. She descended on Elena with the precision of a heat-seeking missile. Dante said you were clumsy, yes? Climbing walls like a little cat. Her hands, surprisingly strong for someone so small, gripped Elena's face, turning it side to side, examining. But very pretty. Good bones. You eat, yes? You are too skinny. Who are you? Chi Sono. The woman pressed a hand to her chest in mock offense. I am Nona, Dante's grandmother, and you must be the girl who finally caught my grandson's eye, thank the Virgin Mary and all the saints. Elena's brain stuttered. We're not modest. I like this. Nona patted her cheek almost too hard, then moved to the tray, pouring coffee into a delicate cup. He never brings girls home. Never. Always work, work, work. I tell him, Dante, you cannot marry your gun. But does he listen? No. Ma'am, I think there's been a... You will call me Nona, not ma'am. Ma'am is for strangers. She thrust the coffee cup into Elena's hands. Drink. Then we talk about Christmas dinner. You like ossobuco? Of course you like ossobuco. Everyone likes ossobuco. Before Elena could protest further, the door opened again. Dante filled the doorframe, dressed in black slacks and a charcoal sweater that did nothing to minimize his massive frame. His hair was still damp from a shower, and in the morning light, the scars on his face looked like silver rivers carved through stone. His mismatched eyes went immediately to Elena, scanning her with the clinical precision of someone checking inventory. "Nona," he said carefully, "what are you doing?" "Getting to know your fidanzata." Nona beamed at him. "She is lovely, nipote. Very polite. Good hips for babies." Elena choked on air. Dante's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Calculation, then decision. "Nona, could you give us a moment?" Of course. Young love needs privacy." She actually winked at Elena. "But not too much privacy before the wedding, yes?" She swept out of the room with the same hurricane energy she'd entered with, leaving a wake of vanilla perfume and mortification. The silence stretched. "She thinks," Elena started. "I know what she thinks." "You have to tell her." "No." Dante moved further into the room, closing the door behind him. "I don't." Elena set down the coffee cup before she threw it at him. "You're going to let your grandmother think I'm your girlfriend? Better than the alternative." "Which is?" He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, and studied her with those unsettling eyes. "I'd tell her the truth, that you're a stranger who got in my car by mistake and is now a potential security risk. Then she asks why you're still alive." The words landed like stones in still water. "She seems so sweet," Elena whispered. "She is. She's also the widow of the former head of this family. She understands the rules." His voice was matter-of-fact, almost gentle. "If you're my woman, you're protected, untouchable. If you're not," he shrugged, "then you're a problem that needs solving." Elena's hands twisted in the duvet. "So I'm supposed to pretend to be in love with you? You're supposed to stay alive." He pushed off the wall. "The doctor said your ankle is sprained, not broken. You'll need to stay off it for a few days. After that, we'll see." "See what?" "If you're telling the truth about who you are." He started toward the door, and panic flared in Elena's chest. As terrifying as he was also the only thing standing between her and whatever solving the problem meant. "Wait." He paused, hand on the doorknob. Elena's mind raced. She needed leverage, needed to make herself useful, necessary, too valuable to dispose of. Her eyes fell on the desk in the corner of the room, dark wood, expensive, covered in papers that someone had clearly been working on. "Is this your office?" she asked. "Guest room. I work everywhere." He followed her gaze. "Why?" "Those contracts." She pointed to a stack of papers near a leather ledger. "What are they for?" His eyes narrowed. "Why do you care?" "Because," she took a breath, gambled everything. "Because I'm a forensic accountant. Was a forensic accountant. Before I got fired yesterday for finding discrepancies my boss didn't want found." The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. "I'm very good at seeing patterns, at finding problems." Dante stared at her for a long moment. Then he walked to the desk, picked up the contract, and brought it to her. "You have 5 minutes. Impress me or stop wasting my time." Elena took the papers with shaking hands. It was a commercial property acquisition, complicated, multi-layered, the kind of deal that would take most people hours to untangle. But she'd been doing this since she was 22, working her way through night school while juggling 3 jobs. Her eyes tracked across the numbers, catching on the clauses, the subsections, the hidden addendums. "There. This escrow account," she said, pointing to a line buried in the 3rd addendum. "The routing number is wrong." "What?" "The routing number. It's off by 1 digit. She looked up at him. "Which means when you transfer the deposit, and I'm assuming we're talking about 7 figures here, it's going to bounce. Or worse, it's going to go to whoever owns the account that does match this number. Either way, you lose the property and the money." Dante took the contract from her hands, his expression unreadable. He pulled out his phone, took a photo of the page, and sent it to someone. 30 seconds later, his phone rang. "Talk to me?" he answered, eyes still on Elena. A pause. "Are you sure?" Another pause, longer this time. "How long has that number been in our system?" His jaw tightened. "Find out who entered it. I don't care how. I want a name by tonight." He hung up. The silence in the room felt electric, dangerous. That mistake, he said slowly, would have cost me $8 million and a property I've been trying to acquire for 6 months. He tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle that had suddenly become interesting. You caught it in under 2 minutes. Elena's heart hammered. I told you, I'm good at finding problems. Apparently. He moved closer and she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. This close, she could see flecks of gold in the brown one, silver in the blue. How many other problems are in my books? I don't know, I'd have to look. And if I let you look, then I'd tell you. She met his gaze, refusing to flinch. That's what I do. That's what I'm good at. Something shifted in his expression. Respect maybe, or the beginning of it. Like he was seeing her for the first time as something other than an inconvenience. Marco, he called toward the door. It opened immediately. The scarred guard from last night stepped inside. Boss, bring me everything from my office. The Castellano contracts, the shipping manifest, the quarterly reports, all of it. Marco's eyebrows rose fractionally. All of it? Tutto. Dante's eyes never left Elena. And bring her a laptop. Password protected, no internet access. She doesn't leave this room, doesn't talk to anyone except me and Nona. Yes, boss. When Marco left, Dante crouched down beside the bed, bringing himself to her eye level. The scars on his face seemed less frightening somehow, more like a map of survival. Here's the deal, Piccola, he said quietly. You work for me. You find the problems in my business. You fix what needs fixing, and you keep your mouth shut about everything you see. And if I do that, then you're useful, and useful people don't disappear. That's it? I'm just supposed to trust you? No. His lips curved into something that might have been a smile on a different man. You're supposed to be smart, and smart people understand leverage. He stood, towering over her again. I need someone I can trust to look at my books. You need protection and a place to stay. Mutually beneficial. Elena thought about her empty apartment, her empty bank account, her empty life waiting back in the city. What about after Christmas, she asked, after the snowstorm clears? That depends on how valuable you make yourself. It wasn't a promise, wasn't even close to safe, but it was something. Okay, she heard herself say. Okay, I'll do it. Dante nodded once, then headed for the door. Dante, he paused, looking back. Why did you really bring me here? The question had been burning in her chest since last night. The truth. For a long moment, she didn't think he'd answer. Then, because you got in my car on the same night someone tried to kill me. Same time, same location, wrong vehicle. His mismatched eyes pinned her in place. And I needed to know if you were part of it. And now I think you're exactly what you say you are. He opened the door. A woman with terrible timing and unexpected talents. Is that a good thing? His smile was sharp, dangerous, and somehow almost warm. We'll see. 3 days passed like a fever dream. Elena worked from the bedroom turned office, her laptop surrounded by mountains of paperwork that told stories Dante's ledgers tried to hide. Shipping manifests that didn't match customs declarations, property acquisitions with suspiciously low valuations, offshore accounts that move money in careful, deliberate patterns. She didn't ask what the money was for, didn't ask about the businesses that seemed legitimate on paper, but felt wrong in her gut. She just found the problems, documented them, and waited for Dante to appear, which he did, every evening like clockwork. He'd sit in the chair across from her, sprawled with deceptive casualness, and listen while she explained what she had found. Sometimes he'd nod. Sometimes his jaw would tighten in a way that made her glad she wasn't whoever had made the mistake. But he always listened, and slowly, impossibly, she'd stopped being quite so afraid. Nona helped with that. The old woman had claimed Elena as her own personal project, bringing food, telling stories about Dante as a boy. So serious. Even at 5, he frowned like an old man, and firmly ignoring every protest that this wasn't real, that Elena wasn't actually staying. Love grows, Nona had said yesterday, patting Elena's hand, like tomatoes. You plant the seed, you give it sun and water and time, and then, bellissima, something worth keeping. Now, on Christmas Eve, exactly 1 week since Elena had gotten in that car, She sat at the desk, her ankle almost healed, and realized she'd smiled more in the past 3 days than she had in the past 3 months, which was insane. She was still a prisoner, still stuck in a gothic mansion with a man who'd kidnapped her, still living a lie to keep herself alive. But when Dante walked in that evening, carrying 2 glasses of wine and wearing a dark sweater that made him look less like a monster and more like a man, her traitorous heart skipped anyway. "You're done for the day," he said, setting one glass in front of her. "I'm in the middle of Elena." The sound of her name in his mouth, no longer Piccola, made something warm unfurl in her chest. "It's Christmas Eve. Even accountants get to rest." She took the wine glass, their fingers brushing. His hands were so much larger than hers, scarred knuckles and tattooed fingers that had probably done terrible things but held the glass with unexpected delicacy. "Nona's making a feast," he continued, leaning against the desk. "7 fishes, it's tradition. I know, my grandmother used to make it too." The words slipped out before she could stop them. His mismatched eyes softened slightly. "The one in the photo?" He'd noticed. Of course he had. "Yeah. She died 2 years ago." Elena took a sip of wine to wash away the tightness in her throat. "Everything kind of fell apart after that. I'm sorry. Are you?" She looked up at him, genuinely curious. "You don't seem like someone who apologizes much." "I'm not." His lips curved. "But I know what it's like to lose the person who matters most." The vulnerability in his voice shocked her. For a moment, the terrifying Mafia boss disappeared, and she saw just a man who'd lost something he couldn't get back. "Your parents?" she asked quietly. "My mother, cancer, when I was 16. He swirled the wine in his glass. "My father was complicated, but my mother was good, kind. She would have liked you. Because I'm useful. Because you're brave." He set down his glass and moved closer until he was standing directly in front of her chair. "You climbed a 12-foot wall with a sprained ankle. You blackmailed your way into a job with a man who could have killed you. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most foolish." "Can't I be both?" His laugh was low, rusty, like he didn't use it often. "Yes, you definitely are." Elena stood and immediately regretted it. Even with her ankle mostly healed, standing put her close, too close to him. She had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes, and she could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. "I should thank you," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "for not killing me, for letting me work, for—" "Don't." His hand came up, fingers brushing her jaw with shocking gentleness. "Don't thank me for doing the bare minimum of not murdering you, Piccola. The bar should be higher than that. In my experience, usually isn't." Something dark flickered across his face. "Who hurt you?" The question was soft, but there was steel underneath it. The same tone he'd used on the phone when ordering his men to find whoever had sabotaged his contract. "No one. Everyone. Does it matter?" She was drowning in those eyes, one blue, one brown, both fixed on her like she was the only thing in the world worth looking at. "Dante." He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His lips were a breath away from hers when Nona's voice echoed up the stairs. "Bambini, dinner is ready. Come before it gets cold." Dante jerked back like he'd been burned. His expression shuddered closed so fast Elena almost thought she'd imagined the moment entirely. "We should—" He cleared his throat. "Dinner. Right, dinner." They stood there awkwardly, the spell broken, the air between them still crackling with everything that had almost happened. Finally, Dante stepped back. "I need to make a call first. Meet me downstairs in 10 minutes? Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. He left, and she collapsed back into the chair, pressing her hands to her flushed cheeks. What the hell was that? 10 minutes later, Elena made her way downstairs, following the sound of Nona's singing and the smell of garlic and lemon. The mansion felt different tonight, less like a fortress, more like a home. Candles flickered in the windows. Greenery draped the banisters. Through the windows she could see snow falling gently, turning the world into a snow globe. She'd almost reached the kitchen when she remembered her phone. Dante had given it back yesterday, fully charged, though he'd disabled the internet and any apps that could send messages. "In case of emergency," he'd said. But her grandmother's photo was on it. The last voicemail she'd ever left. Elena detoured toward the front entrance where her box of belongings had been left. Marco stood guard, but he nodded when he saw her. "Just grabbing something," she said. He grunted, which she'd learned was Marco speak for fine. She found the box on a side table, dug through it until her fingers closed around the phone. Relief washed through her. The front door was slightly ajar. Someone must have stepped out for a cigarette. Through the gap, she could see the snow-covered driveway, peaceful and beautiful. In the Christmas Eve darkness, fresh air, just for a moment, Elena slipped outside, pulling her borrowed cardigan tight against the cold. The snow crunched under her feet as she walked a few paces from the door, breathing in the crisp winter air. She was unlocking her phone when she heard it. The crunch of footsteps, too many, too fast. Elena spun around. 3 men emerged from the shadows near the gates that should have been closed, should have been locked. They moved with predatory precision, fanning out to cut off her escape routes. Well, well. The one in front smiled, and it was nothing like Dante's rare grins. This was all teeth and malice. Dante's new putana. "We were hoping you'd come out to play. Run." Her body screamed the command, and she bolted toward the door. She made it 3 steps before an arm locked around her waist, yanking her backward. A hand clamped over her mouth, muffling her scream. "Quiet now," a voice hissed in her ear. "Wouldn't want to ruin Christmas dinner." Elena bit down hard on the hand, tasted blood. Her attacker swore and loosened his grip just enough. She drove her elbow backward into something soft, heard a grunt of pain, twisted free, and ran. "Prendala!" someone shouted behind her. Footsteps pounded after her. She was fast, but they were faster, and her ankle was still weak, still healing. A hand caught her hair, yanking her head back so hard tears sprang to her eyes. She stumbled, went down on her knees in the snow. "Feisty little thing," the leader said, crouching in front of her. Up close, as she could see a tattoo on his neck, a scorpion intricately detailed. "Moretti has good taste. Too bad he won't get you back in one piece." He pulled out a knife. Elena's scream finally broke free, raw and terrified, echoing across the snow-covered grounds. The front door exploded open. Dante stood there, backlit by the warm interior light, and for a moment he looked like an avenging angel carved from darkness and fury. His eyes found her, saw the man holding her hair, saw the knife, and something inhuman flickered across his face. "Let her go." His voice was so cold it made the winter air feel tropical. The leader laughed. "Or what, Moretti? You'll kill us. We're already dead men. Russo sends his regards." He didn't get to finish. Dante moved faster than anything that large should be able to move. One moment he was at the door. The next, his fist was connecting with the leader's face with a sickening crunch. The man holding Elena released her, going for his gun. Dante caught his wrist, twisted, and the bone snapped like kindling. The man screamed, cut off when Dante's knee drove into his stomach, dropping him like a stone. The third attacker fired. The bullet went wide, missing Dante by inches. Return fire came from the house. Marco and the other guards pouring out, weapons drawn. Elena scrambled backward through the snow, watching in horror and fascination as Dante became something else, something brutal and efficient and utterly lethal. He disarmed the shooter with terrifying ease, used the man's own gun to pistol whip him unconscious, then turned to the leader, who was trying to crawl away, blood streaming from his broken nose. Dante planted a boot on his back, stopping him. "Who else knows she's here?" His voice was conversational, friendly almost. That made it more terrifying. "Everyone," the man spat. "The whole family knows. You can't protect her." Dante pressed down harder. Something in the man's back cracked. "Try again." "Vaffanculo!" The gunshot made Elena flinch. The man went still. Dante holstered the gun, when had he even drawn it, and turned to Marco. "Clean this up. I want to know how they got past the gates. I want names, locations, and a full breakdown of Russo's operations by morning." "Yes, boss." Then Dante was striding toward Elena, and she couldn't move. Couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at this man who'd just killed someone as easily as swatting a fly. He crouched in front of her, those mismatched eyes scanning her for injuries. "Are you hurt?" His hands were gentle on her face, tilting it toward the light. The same hands that had just broken bones and ended a life. "I know. I don't think... Did they touch you?" "My hair." He grabbed my... Her voice broke. Dante's jaw clenched so tight she heard his teeth grind. Come here. He pulled her against his chest, and Elena went, shaking so hard she thought she might fall apart. His arms wrapped around her, solid and warm and safe, and she could hear his heart hammering beneath her ear, proof that he was human after all, that he'd been afraid too. I'm sorry, she whispered into his sweater. I just wanted air. I didn't think... This isn't your fault. His hand cupped the back of her head, fingers threading through her hair where that man had grabbed her. This is mine. I should have increased security, should have seen this coming. Who's Russo? A dead man. The promise in his voice was absolute. By tomorrow, he'll wish he'd never heard your name. He pulled back just enough to look at her, and in his eyes she saw something she hadn't expected. Fear. Not for himself, for her. Come inside, he said, standing and lifting her with him as effortlessly as he had that first night. You're freezing. As he carried her back toward the mansion, Elena looked over his shoulder at the bodies in the snow, at the blood already being covered by fresh snowflakes, and she realized that whatever safety she had felt over the past 3 days had been an illusion. She hadn't just gotten in the wrong car, she'd gotten caught in a war. Dante carried her through the mansion like she weighed nothing, his stride eating up the marble floors with purposeful fury. Guards scattered out of his way. Nana appeared in the hallway, took one look at Elena's face and Dante's expression, and simply nodded. I'll keep dinner warm, she said quietly. He didn't respond, just kept walking up the grand staircase, down the hallway, into his private wing, not the guest room where she'd been staying, but somewhere deeper, more protected, his bedroom. It was massive, dominated by a bed that could sleep 4 and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the grounds. Fire roared in the stone fireplace, throwing shadows across walls lined with bookshelves and what looked like very old, very expensive art. Dante set her down on a leather sofa near the fire, then disappeared into the bathroom. Elena heard water running, cabinets opening and closing. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She pressed them between her knees, trying to still the tremors, but it was useless. She kept seeing the knife, kept feeling the hand in her hair, the terror of being caught, helpless. Dante returned with a first aid kit and a damp towel. He knelt in front of her, this massive, terrifying man, folding himself down to her level, and gently took her hands in his. Let me see. His voice was different now, softer. The rage that had consumed him outside was banked, but not gone, simmering just beneath the surface. Elena unclenched her hands. Her palms were scraped raw from when she'd fallen in the snow. Small cuts, weeping blood. Nothing serious, but Dante's expression darkened anyway. This is going to sting. Yeah, he warned, then began cleaning the wounds with careful precision. She hissed at the bite of antiseptic, and his thumb immediately stroked the inside of her wrist, soothing, almost unconscious. I'm sorry, he murmured. You keep apologizing. I keep failing to protect you. His jaw clenched. That ends now. He worked in silence, cleaning and bandaging her palms with a gentleness that seemed impossible for hands that large, that violent. Elena watched his face. The concentration, the barely contained fury, the way his scarred features softened when he looked at her injuries. You killed him, she said quietly. Yes. Without hesitation. Yes. He finished with her left hand, moved to the right. Does that frighten you? It should. Elena studied him, this complicated man who carried her like she was precious and killed like it was breathing. But mostly I'm just grateful. Is that wrong? His eyes, one blue, one brown, lifted to hers. You're in shock. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Her voice steadied. They were going to hurt me, kill me probably, and you stopped them. I should have stopped them before they got within 10 feet of you. He set aside the first aid kit and cupped her face with both hands, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones. I should have locked you in this room and thrown away the key. Should have put 20 guards on you. Should have... Dante. She covered his hands with her bandaged ones. You can't protect me from everything. Watch me. The intensity in his voice made her breath catch. This wasn't a suggestion or a promise. It was a declaration of war against anything that might threaten her. The man who grabbed you, Dante continued, his voice dropping to something dark and dangerous, said Russo sent them. Do you know what that means? Elena shook her head. It means this wasn't random. Russo is trying to hurt me by taking you. His hands tightened fractionally on her face. It means he knows you matter. But I don't. We're not. She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't lie when his hands were on her face and his eyes were burning into hers. We barely know each other. That stopped being true 3 days ago. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. Maybe the moment you got in my car, I don't know. But somewhere between you calling out my contract mistakes and Nonna adopting you, and you looking at me like I'm not a monster, he exhaled roughly. You became mine to protect. Yours, Elena repeated, testing the word. Mine. No hesitation. And I don't share. I don't compromise, and I sure as hell don't let anyone threaten what's mine and walk away breathing. This should terrify her. This possessive claiming by a man who'd kidnapped her, who killed people, who lived in a world of violence and blood. Instead, for the first time since her grandmother died, Elena felt safe. What happens now? She whispered. Now? Dante's thumb traced her lower lip, and heat flooded through her despite everything. Now I make some calls. Russo and his entire organization will be gone by morning. Anyone who even looked at you wrong will learn exactly what happens when they touch what belongs to me. That's not what I meant. I know. His lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it wasn't so sharp. But it's the only answer I have right now. Everything else, he shook his head. Ask me tomorrow when I'm not imagining 100 different ways to kill everyone who made you afraid. Elena understood. The violence was still too close to the surface, the rage too fresh. He needed to hunt, to destroy, to remind the world why crossing him was suicide. But first, he was here. With her. You're shaken, he observed. I know. I can't stop. Without a word, Dante stood and shrugged out of his sweater. Underneath, he wore only a thin t-shirt that revealed the full scope of his tattoos. They covered his arms, his shoulders, disappeared under the fabric to places she could only imagine. He draped the sweater over her shoulders, and it was still warm from his body, smelling like him. Then he sat beside her on the sofa and pulled her against his side, his arm around her shoulders, holding her like she might shatter. Better? Yes. She melted into him, seeking his heat, his solidity. Thank you. They sat like that while the fire crackled and Elena's shaking gradually subsided. Outside the window, she could see guards patrolling the grounds with military precision. The gates were closed. Floodlights illuminated every inch of the property. A fortress preparing for war. Tell me about her, Dante said suddenly. Your grandmother. The request surprised her. Why? Because you're thinking about her, I can tell. His fingers traced absent patterns on her shoulder. And because I want to know what made you strong enough to bite a man twice your size and elbow him in the ribs. Despite everything, Elena laughed. She did, actually. Taught me to fight dirty. Pretty girls who fight fair end up hurt, she used to say. Smart woman. She was a waitress in Little Italy. Worked 60-hour weeks to raise me after my parents died. Never complained, never gave up. Elena's voice thickened. She would have loved this place. The art, the architecture. She used to drag me to museums every Sunday, teaching me about Caravaggio and Bernini like they were old friends. Is that why you became an accountant? She wanted you to have security. She wanted me to have choices. Elena blinked back tears. She died before she could see me graduate, before she could know that all those sacrifices paid off. She laughed bitterly. Not that they did. I lost that job too. You didn't lose it. Dante's voice hardened. You were punished for being good at it, for being honest. That's not the same thing. Feels the same. It's not. He tilted her face up to look at him. You found corruption and reported it. They fired you for threatening their profits. That makes them criminals, and you... He seemed to search for the word. Dangerous in the best possible way. Is that why you're keeping me? Because I'm dangerous? I'm keeping you because the thought of you leaving makes me want to burn the world down. The confession was raw, unguarded. I'm keeping you because when I saw that man holding a knife to you, I stopped thinking like a businessman and started thinking like... He trailed off. Like what? Like a man who'd do anything, commit any sin, break any rule, destroy anyone, to keep you safe. His mismatched eyes searched hers. Does that frighten you? Elena thought about it, really thought about it. A week ago, she'd been alone, broke, hopeless. She'd gotten in a stranger's car thinking it was her ride home and instead found herself in a gothic mansion with a scarred mafia boss who looked at her like she was the only thing in his world that mattered. It was insane, impossible, completely irrational. "No," she said finally. "It doesn't frighten me at all." Dante's exhale was shaky, relieved. "Good. But Dante?" She placed her bandaged hand over his heart, feeling it thunder beneath her palm. "I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't become a monster to protect me. Don't lose yourself in the violence." She held his gaze. "'Cause the man I'm—" She couldn't quite say falling for, not yet. "The man I'm starting to care about isn't just the beast. He's the one who brings me wine and listens to me talk about route and numbers. He's the one Nana raised. That's who I need you to stay." For a long moment, Dante just stared at her. Then he leaned down and pressed his forehead to hers, his eyes closing. "You asked the impossible, Piccola. I know." She smiled against his skin. "But you're going to try anyway, because you're mine too." His eyes opened, blue and brown, storm and earth, beautiful and broken. "Say it again," he demanded. "You're mine. Cristo." He pulled her into his lap, arranging her so she was straddling him, her hands on his shoulders, his hands spanning her waist. "You can't say things like that to me, not when I'm trying to be civilized." "Maybe I don't want you to be civilized." The boldness surprised her, but she meant it. After tonight, after nearly dying, she was done being afraid of what she wanted, and she wanted him. "Elena," her name was a warning and a prayer. "If I kiss you right now, I won't stop." "Good. This isn't shock-talking or gratitude or—" She kissed him. It was nothing like she'd imagined. There was no gentleness, no tentative exploration. It was hunger and desperation and a week of tension finally breaking. His hand fisted in her hair, the same hair that man had grabbed, claiming it, reclaiming her. She kissed him back with everything she had, her bandaged hand sliding up to cup his scarred face, telling him without words that she saw all of him, the monster and the man, and wanted both. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. "Mine," he said again. "Yours," Elena agreed. And for the first time since her grandmother died, she felt like she'd come home. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the warm weight of an arm draped across her waist. For a moment, she lay perfectly still, afraid that moving would shatter whatever spell had allowed her to fall asleep in Dante Moretti's bed, wrapped in his arms like she was something precious instead of someone who'd stumbled into his life by accident. They hadn't done more than kiss. After that soul-destroying kiss on the sofa, he'd carried her to his bed, tucked her against his chest, and held her while she finally stopped shaking. Somewhere around midnight, exhaustion had won, and she'd fallen asleep to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Now, Christmas morning light painted the room gold, and she could hear voices downstairs, Nona singing, the clatter of pots and pans, the rich aroma of coffee and cinnamon wafting up. "You're thinking too loud," Dante rumbled against her hair. Elena tilted her head back to find him already awake, propped on one elbow, watching her with those devastating mismatched eyes. "How long have you been staring at me?" she asked. "Long enough to memorize every freckle." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "You snore, by the way." "I do not." "You do. Soft little snuffling sounds like an angry kitten." His lips curved. "It's adorable." Before she could protest further, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. The smile dropped from his face as he read the screen, replaced by something cold and satisfied. "It's done," he said simply. "Russo and his top lieutenants, arrested by the FBI an hour ago." He showed her the phone, a news headline about a massive organized crime bust, photos of men in handcuffs being led from a warehouse. "Turns out the financial discrepancies you found in my books, they weren't mistakes. They were Russo's men skimming from my operations and trying to make it look like bad accounting." Elena sat up, her mind racing. The routing number error was intentional. They were rerouting payments to offshore accounts, building a war chest to fund a coup. Dante's expression was grim. "If you hadn't caught it, they would have had $8 million and leverage over half my suppliers by New Year's. So I accidentally saved your empire? You saved more than that." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The FBI's been building a case against Russo for years. I gave them everything you found, the paper trail, the evidence, all of it. Wrapped it up with a bow. His smile was sharp. Legitimate channels. No bodies, just justice. Elena stared at him. You did that for me, because I asked you not to become a monster. I did it because you were right. He pulled her back down against his chest. And because queens don't marry men with blood on their hands. Her heart stopped. Queens? Come downstairs, he said instead of answering. Nona's making her famous Christmas bread, and I have something for you. The dining room had been transformed overnight. A massive Christmas tree stood in the corner, dripping with ornaments and lights. The table groaned under the weight of Nona's feast, fresh bread, pastries, fruit, cheeses, and enough food to feed 20 people despite there being only 3 of them. Nona beamed when they entered, taking one look at Elena's borrowed clothes, Dante's t-shirt and sweatpants, and clapping her hands together in delight. Finalmente! She pulled Elena into a crushing hug. I knew you were good for him. Look, he smiles. He never smiles. Nona, Dante warned, but there was no heat in it. Sit. Eat first, then presents. Nona bustled around the table, loading plates with enough food to feed an army. Elena, you are too skinny. This is why you fainted. I didn't faint. I was attacked. Same thing. Not enough food, not enough meat on your bones. Eat. They ate. Elena discovered Nona's Christmas bread was worth killing for. Sweet, rich, studded with candied fruit and nuts. Dante watched her eat with undisguised satisfaction, occasionally sliding more food onto her plate when she wasn't looking. It felt like family, like home, like everything she'd lost when her grandmother died returned in the most impossible way. After breakfast, Nona produced a small mountain of gifts wrapped in elegant paper. Most were for Elena, clothes that actually fit. I guessed your size, Kara. Jewelry. Every woman needs good pieces. And a beautiful leather-bound journal. For your accounting work, or your thoughts, or whatever you write in journals. Elena's throat tightened. Nona, this is too much. Nonsense, you are family now. Nona patted her hand firmly. And family takes care of each other. Now Dante has something for you, too. Something special. Dante shot his grandmother a look that would have felled a lesser woman. But Nona just smiled serenely and began clearing plates. Come with me, he said to Elena. He led her back upstairs, but not to his bedroom. Instead, he opened a door she hadn't noticed before, smaller, more discreet, and gestured her inside. It was an office, but not just any office. The room was lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with art books, Caravaggio, Bernini, Michelangelo, all the masters her grandmother had taught her to love. A massive desk sat before a window overlooking the snow-covered grounds, and on it sat a state-of-the-art computer, multiple monitors, and filing cabinets that looked brand new. I don't understand, Elena whispered. You said your grandmother would have loved this place. The art, the architecture. Dante moved to stand behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders. So I called in some favors last night. Had these books delivered, set up a proper workspace. He turned her to face him. This is yours, your office, for as long as you want it. Elena's vision blurred with tears. Dante, let me finish. His thumbs stroked her shoulders, grounding her. I know how we started. I know I took your choice away when I locked those doors and drove out of the city. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. He took a breath. But I'm asking anyway. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Elena's heart stuttered. This isn't a prison anymore, Piccola. It's a home. My home, but it's empty without you. He opened the box, revealing a ring, not a gaudy diamond, but something more meaningful. An antique emerald, flanked by smaller stones, set in what looked like Victorian gold. This was my mother's, the only thing she left me that mattered. Dante, I'm not asking you to marry me today. I'm not that insane. His lips quirked. But I'm asking you to stay, not as my accountant, not as Nona's project, but as my partner, my equal. His mismatched eyes burned into hers. My queen, if you'll have me. the beast in all his scars. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the weight of this moment, this impossible choice that didn't feel like a choice at all. "You're insane," she said finally. "We've known each other a week. I know. You kidnapped me. I know. Your world is dangerous. People tried to kill me yesterday, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure they never get close again." He cupped her face with both hands. "I can't promise you normal, Elena. I can't give you safe or simple or anything resembling a conventional life, but I can promise you'll never be alone again, never be invisible, never be undervalued." His voice dropped. "I see you, all of you, and I'm asking you to see me, really see me, and choose me anyway." She thought about her empty apartment, her empty bank account, her empty life before that wrong car. She thought about Nana's hugs and Dante's rare smiles and the way he looked at her like she'd hung the moon. She thought about her grandmother's voice. "Love grows like tomatoes. You give it sun and water and time." "Okay," Elena heard herself say. "Okay?" Dante's expression was almost vulnerable. "That's it? Just okay? Okay, I'll stay?" She smiled through her tears. "Okay, I choose you. Okay to all of it." She took the ring from the box and slipped it onto her right hand. Not her left, not yet, but a promise all the same. "But Dante, see? If you ever lock me in a car again, I'm climbing that wall. And this time, I'll make it." His laugh was surprised, delighted, free. "Deal." Then he kissed her, and Elena kissed him back, tasting coffee and cinnamon and the beginning of something impossible. When they finally broke apart, Nona was standing in the doorway, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "Brava!" She clapped her hands. "Now we plan a wedding. Spring, I think. The gardens will be beautiful." "Nona," Dante groaned. But Elena laughed, and it felt like flying. She'd gotten in the wrong car on Christmas Eve, and somehow, impossibly, she'd ended up exactly where she was meant to be. If you love Dante and Elena's story, I'd be honored if you'd leave a comment below telling me your favorite moment. Was it the touch her and die scene, the first kiss, Nona's Christmas meddling, and if you can't get enough of grumpy Mafia bosses and the sunshine women who tame them, hit that subscribe button. I have more dark romance stories coming, including the tale of Marco, Dante's scarred lieutenant, and the witness he's been ordered to protect. Until next time, remember, sometimes the wrong turn leads you exactly where you need to be. Merry Christmas, and may all your romances be deliciously dark. Subscribe for more stories.